Ladies, gentlemen, please sit down, drop everything you're doing, and watch this match. Close all your other tabs. This is not a game you want to have on in the background while you do other things. This is a game that needs to be watched from start to finish. Because in my opinion, this is game of the year, maybe even game of the decade. This game features two of the absolute greatest players in the world going head-to-head in a tournament finale. On one end, you have Voice of Akasha. If you've been watching my replays for a while, you should know who this player is. I've casted 2 of his games. And he has kind of like a legendary status in the community as a player who shows up maybe once in a blue moon. He absolutely stomps his opponent and he leaves. And he doesn't just win, he wins in spectacular fashion. He wins on day 15. He just absolutely shreds his opponents. His play is impeccable. He's been described as the greatest Advanced Wars player to ever live. But a lot of people have been wondering just how good is Voice of Akasha, because most of the time he's playing like people around 1300 to 1400 MMR, which is still very high, but it's not the highest on the site. Because in this tournament match, Voice of Akasha is going up against Rip, one of the most impressive players on the ladder as of late. This is a player worth following. He's reached an astounding MMR of 1622. Just really high. Inkugark is like 1680 at the moment, so that should give you an idea. Very few players, only a small handful of players are able to reach 1600 MMR in Advanced Wars by Web. That is difficult to do, but this guy has done it. And I've been watching some of his matches. He just tears through his opponents. He rips through them, no pun intended. And the reason why this match is so exciting is we finally get to see just how good Voice of Akasha is. This is a test of his skills. Some people have described him as an 1800 MMR ranked player. Some people say, oh, actually, he's quite overrated. You know, if he was pitched up against one of the greatest of all time, he would struggle. So when this match came up, I was very, very excited because, you know, it's finally time to see what Voice of Akasha can really do against a real, proper opponent. And he has one right now. So this is one of the finale games of the Mariner Cup. Basically, how the Mariner Cup works is it's a standard tournament. And I think it was the first tournament hosted in a while on the site for many years. So it's kind of a big deal. And there are several divisions because, of course, there's many players. And these are the winners of each division. Inkugark, no surprise there that he made it to the finale. Toulouse, also one of the best players of all time. A Chinese player I don't know that much about. His name translates to like Dream Aaron. I don't know anything about him. Then we of course have Voice of Akasha and Rip, who won their respective divisions. And these players are going to go against each other in kind of like a round-robin style format, which means we will see Inkugark versus Voice of Akasha and Toulouse versus Voice of Akasha later on, which I'm very excited about. So these players are basically going to duke it out. The one who scores the most point is going to be declared the winner of the Mariner Cup. So it's a very stacked lineup right here. A very, very stacked lineup. And yeah, the map that we're playing on today is called Velingor? Vainglor? I'm not entirely sure how to describe it. But it's a mixed base map. And mixed base maps are always fun, as you know, they're my favorite kind of maps. That means a map where the bases are spread all over the map. So you got orange right here. The first turn advantage for orange is that orange has to capture one of the bases. Blue starts with this base already captured. This is very standard in mixed base maps because the initiative advantage is very big in mixed base. Because in mixed base, everything speeds up. You know, like in standard matches, games usually go to like day 15 to 20, whereas mixed base maps can be over on day 10 because the action starts so quickly because there's battle on multiple fronts. So how the map balances it out is by having player 1 has to capture this base before he can get going. But you have a blue player with 3 bases, or there's actually a 4 base mixed base, which is crazy. You got 2 bases here, 1 here, and then 1 here. You got orange players with a base here, here, and here. So what you will see on Vainglor is a base race. Orange player will attack the blue base. Blue player will attack the orange base right here. There are airports very close to the base as well, so you're most likely going to see bombers. If one of the players tries to go like Mega Tank, which is entirely feasible on this map, considering how big it is, you can just shut that down with a bomber. So one thing though that really makes this map so hectic is you have very tight reinforcement lines right here. These two bases has to be funneled through this little choke point right here that's on a city. So if you allow your opponent to take this city, like if orange allows blue to take this city, or blue lets orange take this city, or like maybe they'll plunk a battlecopter down there, you can cuck the entire reinforcement line, and then you can go for your opponent's HQ, which is very exposed on this map. Extremely exposed. There's no black boats on it or anything like that. So we're going to see base races, and we're going to see HQ rushes in a mixed base format, which is pretty crazy. Thought I'd bring up the rules of the match. I don't normally do this, but I don't think the replay viewer saves them anywhere. So you can see both players, they had a pretty generous timer, or more generous than the rest of the cup. They got 5 days and 2 days per turn, 7 days maximum. So there's a capture limit of 38, so that means if one player captures 38 properties, bases and cities, then they win immediately. And there is also a day limit, 35-day limit, so whoever has the most properties after day 35 will win. So the match will not go on forever. Black bombs and stealths banned as per usual, although on some mixed base maps it's not entirely uncommon to see stealths, but not on this map. So, and the CO matchup wasn't very it wasn't a lot of variety on this map. Let's just put it that way, because this is a tier 2 mixed base map, and so of course you're gonna see Max. Olaf might be somewhat viable on maps like this, but in a mixed base setting, Max is kind of king, because there are tanks everywhere and the extra movement is just so nice. So both players, of course, picked Max. In fact, I think every single player who played on this map in the finale picked Max. So he's pretty much the undisputed best CO, and there's really no disputing that, because again, that Max Blast, when you got tanks everywhere, the +2 movement, when you have battles on multiple fronts, you just really can't beat it. I still think Olaf might have been somewhat decent on this map, considering it's a 4-base mixed base map, but he would probably just get crushed before his global damage could do anything, so. But yeah. The stage is set, ladies and gentlemen. Voice of Akasha versus Rip in a finale match. How will this go? Let's get started. So, I don't even know how to begin casting this map. I'm nervous to cast it. Because I know how great this game is. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I was actually going to bring a Grandmaster along, Nanova, for co-commentating, but we had some issues with his internet and his voice wasn't clear enough, so we couldn't do it. I would have loved to have Deegis or someone else join me, but it's early in the day and I don't think many of them are available yet. But yeah. So, first things first, get the neutral bases. That's like the first thing you got to do. Not really rocket science, but you know, still something you got to look after. This base, as I said, these bases are going to be the center of the conflict right here. It's not really a question of if they're going to get taken over. It is just a question of when they're going to be taken over. You just have to delay it as much as possible. But Rip going for this property right here. There's some good chains that you can get. Like you can go this. You got like a nice little chain here with your infantry. Airports start out captured. So you can see battlecopters joining the fray really early. But of course you need the economy for that to work. So and there's just so many properties on the map. So both players, I think, are going to reach like an income of 30k. So you're going to see a lot of Neo tanks and bombers and battlecopters. It's going to be crazy. It almost feels like a high funds match with how many properties there are on the map right here. But yeah, Rip, Akasha, just capping the properties, sending infantry out. We got our first tank out from Rip on day 3. So this tank is going to head into the center and try to do some harassing. Could also go around here and try to harass the infantry from below. Gonna see a lot of tanks in the early goings of this matchup, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like Max really builds artillery, but battlecopter is also pretty viable. Voice of Akasha skips the comm tower to go straight for these two properties right here. There are 2 comm towers per player right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that Max will have a day-to-day passive 40% firepower on his vehicles. Whenever he pops his Max Blasts, he'll have 90%. firepower. So that's basically Grim levels of firepower without the minus defense. So this matchup, very volatile. You gotta know your ranges. Voice of Akasha responds with a tank in similar fashion on his base. Let's see what Rip decides to do with his first tank. Moves it out into the center right here. Always nice to have your units in the center in a mixed-base format. It's kind of like when you're playing chess. You want to grab the center first. This is why like knights and bishops are better in the center. It's the same concept in mixed-base maps. A tank in the center can go anywhere, and it can threaten anywhere. It's much better than a tank here, for example, that can only really threaten this area. So always try to move your tanks out into the center of the map, and then you can kind of decide where you go from there. Rip going a second tank. So both players they're doing very similar openings. Are they exactly mirrored? I think they're pretty much exactly mirrored, yeah. Both players sending out their infantry for these two properties right here. So yeah, they've practiced these openers for sure. So Voice of Akasha now moves out his tank as well in same fashion as Rip. And let's see what he decides to do. Probably another tank. Could start to see battlecopters come out now. Voice of Akasha decides to build a tank here on the left side. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a battle over the center. These center properties are going to be contested for a little while. It's going to be hard to capture them with all these tanks flying around. But so far, just a chill capture game. Not much crazy stuff going on here. Both players just, you know, kind of taking their time, moving out. But they will start clashing very soon. Another tank comes out from Rip. I think they're actually, they're mirroring each other's playstyles at the moment. There's very little deviation going on here, right here. Both players now at 16k income. 17k for Voice of Akasha. Voice of Akasha goes for the center property. Also starts to capture his comm tower. Builds a tank on his weak side base. So now we have 3 tanks out from Voice of Akasha. 3 tanks out from Rip. Still no battlecopters for either player. Voice of Akasha builds yet another tank. Moves his tank out to reinforce the comm tower. And again, you can see both players just really going for that center control. When you're playing max versus max with 2 comm towers, you can't really place your tanks on neutral cities anymore. They're still gonna get destroyed. You can still place them on your cities, but you still need tank backup. Rip finishes capping his comm tower. Bunch of cities, and you can see their income is really starting to skyrocket right now. 20k income for both players. Rip placing his tank carefully on the forest here. It is in range of Voice of Akasha's tank, but he's got a tank to back it up with. And he builds yet another tank. So, I mean, you can really tell this is about to get real complicated really quickly. I can't even imagine what it's like to be these players in this kind of matchup. How many calculations they've had to do. How many things they needed to look at. It's absolutely crazy to think about. I know that they both used up their timers. Like, they got 2 days per move, and they used that time wisely. So we got the first engagement from Voice of Akasha. He charges in with his tank, takes a shot at Rip's infantry. He's going to try and grab this property. It's going to be tough for him to do that, though. And another shot from the infantry from the mountain. And yeah, Voice of Akasha is getting feisty this turn, taking a lot of engagements and going for the capture right here. So Voice of Akasha draws first blood against Rip. This HQ is very important in this particular battle because you can actually place your tanks there and be safe from a max tank attacking you because you'll heal up 2 HP. So the HQs are strategically very important for the placement here. They're going to be used a lot by both players. But Voice of Akasha is getting feisty here. He's laying on the pressure on this northeastern side. 1, 2, 3 tanks. Really telling Rip that, hey man, I'm taking these properties and there's nothing you can do about it. Another tank comes out, and Voice of Akasha base skips. Yeah, he base skips. Not something you see him do often, but there's a good reason for it. So, he didn't have a lot of money left, and I guess he just valued that tank a lot more. So, getting out that tank on his base. 4 tanks now threatening Rip. This is kind of suffocating. Rip, though, responds with a bit of an attack, wiping out Voice of Akasha's comm tower. And he actually attacks the HQ tank. Look at the firepower here. This is a tank on an HQ. 5-7. So yeah, Rip is not scared here. He goes immediately for the HQ, takes a shot at the infantry, wipes it out, and moves more tanks into the center. And he really doesn't want to let Voice of Akasha take this property, so he moves in with his infantry here as well. Takes another shot with his tank. Baboomba! It's wiped out. So Voice of Akasha opening up with some early aggression. Rip responding with a very nice counterattack. Day 8 rolls in. So Voice of Akasha will get this property right here. So, but Rip will most likely take this one. Probably, unless he finds a way to stop these tanks coming in here. Voice of Akasha also needs to be careful about his comm tower. It is being threatened right now. You really don't want to give your opponent a comm tower in this situation. But sooner or later, Voice of Akasha will lose this base. So I don't really know how smart it is to be super aggressive on his weak side. But maybe he's thinking he can get some properties out of it before something happens. But he really has to focus more, I think, on Rip's weak side. Because again, this base needs to fall at some point. And if Voice of Akasha loses his base before Rip loses his, he's going to be behind. But Voice of Akasha now taking a very nice shot. Look at that, 2-9. Woo! Gets another very nice tank shot. Even uses his infantry on the HQ to counterattack. Very nicely done. Actually forgoes capping the city to move his infantry back because he doesn't want to lose it. Gets another infantry down here to guard his comm tower. Pretty nicely done. And 2 more tanks comes out. Still only tanks from both players. We haven't seen a single battlecopter yet. Let's see if that's about to change. Voice of Akasha would really like to get this property, but Rip has his 2 infantry here guarding it, and another tank as well here. So you can see Voice of Akasha is actually focusing hard on his weak side, which is not something you tend to do in mixed-base matches. But again, it is Voice of Akasha. He probably has a good reason for it. So far, both players trading blows with each other. I wouldn't say either one comes out on top of the other. But let's see what Rip does now on day 8. He comes in with his tank, takes a shot, takes a lot of damage back though. But he takes out Voice of Akasha's tank, and instead of going for this property, which is sure to get captured, he goes for the safer neutral property. And here, Rip does something very smart, which I really like. He places his tank in front of Voice of Akasha's tank on his base, which is genius. Because, of course, Voice of Akasha does have this little tank right here, but he can't kill this tank with this tank because there's 2 mountains on each side. So this is a part of this map that made the match very difficult, in my opinion, is that you can always place a tank on the weak side base. When a base looks like this, you can kind of choke out the tank by just placing a unit right here. And the tank, if the tank takes a shot, you can just replace it with another one, and you keep base locking your opponent. So it's a very tricky positioning of this base. Like, Voice of Akasha probably has to move his other tank away and build a new one, but he can never truly attack. He needs another tank over here to get this tank out before he can move out. So if Rip can keep on the pressure, then Rip can essentially base lock Voice of Akasha. And now, while he's doing that, he's also applying pressure to these properties right here. Tank comes out from Rip. He moves out with another tank, and another tank, and another tank. Now, of course, Voice of Akasha still has this tank right here, but he doesn't really want to use it to free this tank because Rip has a lot of vehicles right here which he can just use to punish it with. So Rip is kind of goading Voice of Akasha into taking very unfavorable engagement. He has kind of a bad choice here. Does he sack this tank to free the tank on the base, or does he move back? Let's see what he decides to do. Now Voice of Akasha moves up 3 tanks to attack. Now he kind of has an idea of going for Rip's base. Rip has already begun the attack on Voice of Akasha's base right here. Voice of Akasha just now realizes, okay, we got to take out this base right here. So let's see. This is probably a good time to bring out some battlecopters. And just as I say that, yeah, look at that. Like, because now you want to go for the attack on the base. And battlecopters are very good in a base trade scenario, especially when your opponent is on one base, because you're forcing them to choose between either a tank or an anti-air. And if you have tanks in range, they can't build anti-air, so the battlecopter is essentially safe. So battlecopter is very strong in this position. Like, there's no way Rip can really afford to build an anti-air. He has to bring it from, like, all the way over here. And then he has to move it through here, which risks it getting picked off. So positioning of anti-air is everything in this game. Like, air units really do play a big role in this particular match. Now, Voice of Akasha is moving in right here, threatening to take the com tower. So, Voice of Akasha decides to use his 9 HP tank to kill Rip's tank. He really doesn't want to attack here. And instead, he moves his tank down to guard his com tower. But this does take a tank out of Voice of Akasha's weak side, which may not be great for him. He may already have conceded that he will lose this base very quickly. But what he can do now is he can build a medium or a neo tank on this base to kind of try and keep it alive. He decides to go with a regular tank. I think maybe a medium tank would have been a little bit too costly. Rip can always just bring in a bomber or a battlecopter from this airport to target it down. But for now, Voice of Akasha just going for the tank. I'm wondering if maybe medium tank would have been better here, though. But we'll see what happens. So Voice of Akasha bringing in 3 more vehicles into the center. You can see the situation is just so tense. With firepower being as high as it is, your infantry walls have to be impeccable. So Day 9 rolls in for Rip. A big force from Akasha is coming into the center here. Voice of Akasha is also starting to attack this base right here. So a lot of things are going on at once here. Infantry battles going on north and south. Akasha has kind of deterred this attack on his com tower, but now Akasha is also attacking Rip's com tower on this side. So there's just so many decisions you got to make in a situation like this. Like, where do you send your troops? How many troops do you need to send to each front? This is why I love mixed base. There's so many decisions that goes into playing the game. You know, unlike standard matches where it's usually just north versus south or east versus west, and there's like infantry walls and artillery. In a mixed base scenario, you have to think about so many things at once. So let's see what Rip decides to do here. He moves in his tank. Takes out one of Voice of Akasha's tanks, moves in his own tank. This tank takes a lot of damage. And Rip now finds himself with a bit of an income advantage as he takes over Akasha's property on this side. So 27,000 to 24k. Of course, Akasha's about to capture this on his next turn, but the income is going to matter quite a lot on this map, and you'll see later on. So Rip now balancing, defending his base versus attacking Akasha. Placing most of his vehicles on cities to repair them up. Very smart to do this. Unit count is important in a game like this. And I'm imagining right now Rip is probably going to go medium tank on his left-hand base. So let's see what he decides to do. No, actually anti-air. Okay. So, yeah, he has to get an anti-air out. Because he has to defend against the battlecopter. But he also has to wall so that Akasha doesn't just roll in and kill his anti-air. And look at this wall right here. It's very well done. So, if Akasha kills the infantry with 2 tanks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he can still attack the anti-air on this base, but it will get healed up. I don't remember the calcs in my head. Max on 2 towers versus anti-air. I would imagine it's like 6 HP of damage-ish, and then it would heal up to 5 HP maybe on the next turn. So, but a 5 HP anti-air can still take out a battlecopter, especially with max powers. So, this anti-air would still be functional. So, Akasha doesn't want to break this wall to damage the anti-air. It's not worth it. So, yeah, that's the only way he can do it, is to use. So, it's a solid wall out of Rip. He needs to keep this anti-air alive. Of course, Akasha has tanks on the north-hand side, too. So, this thing is very exposed. But as long as he can just keep that one anti-air, like maybe pull it back, keep it alive, then he has a response for Akasha's battlecopters. So, again, I'd say Rip is definitely in a better position to defend this base compared to Akasha, who has just 1 tank here, and there's no way he can build an anti-air safely. So Rip is going hard for the base now. Day 10 rolls in. Rip has an income lead. Let's see what Akasha decides to do. He actually takes a shot with the tank. Could have moved back, but I think he just realizes that this base is probably lost at this point. But he pops max force, ladies and gentlemen. First max force of the match. Let's see what he decides to do with it. Boosh! That's why he attacked, because he wanted to get this shot right here. And in comes Akasha's Tank Brigade, and it's a very powerful attack. Look at the damage he's dealing. He realizes that he has to do something, and look at that, I wonder if that may have been a slight luck roll. I don't remember the calcs exactly in my head, but I know that on 50%, I think a tank can one-shot an infantry on planes, and this should be a 60% boost. So I'm wondering if this might have been a luck roll. You can't bring up the damage calculator in the replay viewer, much to my dismay. I really would have wanted you to be able to do that, because I would have liked to check if this was actually a gamble. I think it might have been. Someone in the comment section can point that out. But, I mean, it's a strong max force, and Akasha's now also threatening Rip's comm tower. Rip's obviously going to interrupt that, but still. And going for a bunch of captures here. So it's a strong max force, but of course now we have to contend with the fact that Rip has his max blasts. And yeah, he took a lot of damage on his vehicles, every single one of them almost, but he still has some healthy vehicles over here. And he has 2 healthy vehicles over here. And with that 2 extra move from max blasts, this is going to be pretty insane. So the counterattack is going to be considerable, but not going to lie, it kind of looks like Voice of Akasha is ahead right now. I mean, that was a strong power. Whoever can get their power first in a mixed base match usually is in a pretty good position. But let's see how effective Rip's counterattack is. Max Blast comes in. His firepower is now 90%. 90% with 2 extra move. That is pretty crazy. Tank comes in. Boom. Look at the damage. Of course, Akasha does have that 10% defense from his own power, so it's gonna reduce the damage a little bit. Rip actually comes in with the anti-air. Actually sacks some of his own tanks here to deal some damage. But once again, Akasha is not really going to be able to dislodge. Look how annoying Rip is here, placing this infantry in front of the tank, just preventing it from being able to move out. And in comes one of his own tanks. Boom, almost a one-shot. I think that might have been a luck roll. So while Akasha had a really strong attack here, Rip's counterattack is almost as devastating. And once again, both players are equal. And Rip does, in my opinion, a very good move here. He gets the medium tank out on his base. Of course, he still needs to keep his anti-air alive, but look at his walling. It's really solid. Like, Akasha just popped his power. It's going to be very hard for him to do damage to this anti-air. And keep in mind, just one shot from the tank isn't really going to do much, because the anti-air is still going to heal up, and a 5 HP max anti-air is still viable at hunting copters, so it's not really going to do much. But Rip builds another anti-air. He kind of has to ferry more anti-air over here, because Akasha's going to spam battlecopters. Rip has not built a single battlecopter yet. Akasha's built 2, and I have a feeling that Akasha's going to build a lot more. So Rip doing a good job repairing his troops. You can see Rip has quite a unit lead over Akasha right now, because he's been quite adept at keeping his low HP units alive, sending them back for repairs. It's going to take a little while before they're healthy enough to return to the front lines, but it's still pretty good. But day 11 rolls in for Voice of Akasha. He finishes capping this property right here. And in comes the battlecopter, and I think he's going to try now to take a shot at the anti-air, but no, actually he's not. He's going to block the medium tank. So he says, screw you, anti-air, I don't care about you. You can't kill my battlecopter. So this infantry is on this empty missile silo, which is a 3-star terrain, and there's nothing Rip really has here that can punch through it. So this battlecopter is safe, guarded by this little mountain here as well. So really, really nice positioning from Akasha right here. Battlecopter coming in. Now, you know, Akasha being a little bit annoying. I mean, he knows that Rip can interrupt this, but Rip would rather have his infantry go elsewhere. So he's just kind of keeping them busy, and there's going to be a stream of infantry coming in from here, and Rip's one base is not going to be able to produce anymore, so the base race is on. And Akasha realizes, yeah, I'm not going to be able to fight against all of this. I might as well pull my forces back, and look at the walling right here, the infantry in front protecting the tanks. At this point, it's kind of interesting to see how Akasha isn't really building anything on this base. He's just shooting with this tank. He's kind of like realizing that this base is probably lost. So he's not even building anything here. He's just shooting. I am wondering if it would have been better for him to move his tank down and build another. But I think at this point he's just dedicated to taking out Rip's base and kind of sacking his own. So day 11 rolls in and both players still very even. This is usually around the time where Voice of Akasha starts to stomp his opponent. And he's not stomping Rip yet. They're very evenly matched, both in unit count and income. So Rip once again. Look at that, sacking units. Sacking a lot of units, in fact. He just sacked 4 units. He just sacked 5 units. And he takes the base. This was the move of the game, in my opinion. This was play of the game. If Advanced Wars had play of the game like Overwatch, this would be play of the game, in my opinion. I don't think anyone predicted this. Like, if you look at this positioning, there's no way Rip should be able to break through this base. Like, how? He relies on luck damage from injured units. He sacks a 1 HP tank, a 4 HP tank, another 1 HP tank, a 4 HP infantry, and it just barely brings Voice of Akasha's tank down to 6 HP, which allows Rip to get the kill on the base. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Rip has secured a base. And Voice of Akasha, sure, he can interrupt it with a 7 HP infantry next turn. He can delay it for 1 turn, but that's all he can do. He can only delay it. These units not going to be able to get there in time. This is an absolute huge turning point in the match. So Rip now has a massive initiative advantage against Voice of Akasha. And with the medium tank plonked down on his own base, Voice of Akasha is going to have a tough time. He's now really behind. This play was so good. We have to watch it one more time. It was so magnificent. Just look at this. Look at this play. Who would have thought to do something like this? Seriously, who would have thought to do something like this? Absolutely crazy. Like, so few players would have seen that. But Rip saw it. I think it may... I would very much like, in the comment section, by the way, if some of you guys can calculate the odds of this working, because there is some luck involved in this. There is some luck involved in this. There has to be. A 4 HP tank, a 1 HP tank, a 4 HP infantry, and a full HP tank. I'd like you to calculate the odds of this succeeding, because I think there is some luck involved here. If all of those weakened units did 0 luck, I don't know if this would have succeeded, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was 100%. Some math nerds in the comment section, please calculate it. I'll heart your comment, I promise. Leave a like too, that'd be nice. So, absolutely crazy. Rip is now in a very good spot, and he does a really nice counterattack against Voice of Akasha too, clearing out a lot of his units. This battlecopter is in a bad spot right now. What can it really do? Now Rip is starting to take this city as well. And of course, I mean, he interrupts the comm towers because why not? And looking at the game right now, it's looking very good for Rip. And it's looking very bad for Voice of Akasha. Voice of Akasha has really no good way to take out this medium tank. And he's getting his own base captured. And Rip's going to have a nice little juicy income advantage coming in very, very soon. But, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot count Voice of Akasha out of the match just yet. He is the GOAT for the reason. So, he is the GOAT for the reason. The things I say sometimes. So, Voice of Akasha recognizing that, man, I gotta retake that base. So he's pulling back. He's abandoning ship, basically. He's like, that base is screwed. There's no way I'm getting it back. Does a nice little interrupt right here. And here, he's actually just kind of sacking his own battlecopter because... Never mind. Of course, he finds a way to attack the Empire. So here, I remember, I think I was paying attention to this live as it was happening. I was like, I saw Akasha move his battlecopter and I was like, oh, I guess he's just sacking it. And then I was like, oh no, of course, he's just going to kill the Empire. So, of course, Rip is ahead. But you see the dilemma he is in right now. I mean, the battlecopters are just going to start waylaying this medium tank. It's not really a lot. And if Rip pulls it off and builds an Empire, the tanks are just going to smash it. So, Sure, Rip is ahead, but Voice of Akasha is going to take the base soon. There's no question about that. But the question is just how soon? 1 day? 2 days? 3 days? Rip's turn, rolls in. He does what damage he can. And now he starts to capture a bunch. There's a bunch of properties just waiting to be captured right here. But Rip realizes he's got to keep his vehicles alive, so he pulls his Antire back, which is smart. Now he's going for the Com Tower. But he's not going to get it. It's going to take him 3 turns to get it. But Rip is bringing in a lot of units from his strong side right here, moving them over here. He's going to try. He only builds an infantry this turn on his base because he knows Akasha's going to kill it. But I think what he's hoping for here is that Akasha will go for the base, and then maybe Rip can pop a power and just smash into him from the sides. But another battlecopter. Is that the first battlecopter Rip builds this entire match? I think it is. Yeah, it's the first battlecopter he produces all match, actually. But things are gonna start to heat up quite a lot now, because now comes Akasha, but there is a little bit of a problem. He doesn't really have any infantry to capture the base. He has this one, but he would have loved to have an infantry this turn. But he brings in his battlecopters. Rip only has a single Antire. And Akasha goes hard on the medium tank, bringing it down to 2 health. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to see a more traditional west versus right side battle play out right here. Akasha's battle. He has so many battlecopters. 4 battlecopters, a tank, and a 5th battlecopter from Voice of Akasha right now. And he has that superpower. Now, I want you to pay attention to this Com Tower right here, because Voice of Akasha is going to get that next turn. 5 HP infantry against this Com Tower. Rip is not going to get his Com Tower for another 2 turns. Look at Akasha's power meter. He has a super ready. So right now, Akasha has a small but very powerful window where he can deliver a crushing blow, because he can take over Rip's Com Tower to get 3 Com Towers as max. I just want to make sure I'm not talking out of my butt here. I want to make sure. I think this means 100% firepower increase. Yeah, because Max Blast sets it to 60%, and this is with the passive boosts included. Plus 3 Com... No, actually, no, it's 90% total, because it's 60% with the boosts. And then it's 7, 8, 9 to the Com Tower. So it's 80 with 2 Com Towers, 90 with 3 Com Towers. So... And what's so crazy about this is that Akasha, he captures Rip's Com Tower, so he also takes away a Com Tower for Rip, so it's a 10% reduction in Rip's firepower for 1 turn. Which is going to matter quite a lot. So again, when I looked at this, I remember I said, I was watching this match in the Discord with the other Grandmasters, and I say, I think Voice of Akasha is going to capture the Com Tower and pop his Max Blast for a devastating push. So Voice of Akasha, Rip now capping. You know, he's capping a lot of properties here, and he's destroying tanks whenever he can. But it's looking pretty good for Rip now. Like, he's definitely ahead. There's no question about that. He's got a nice little income advantage. He's got a unit count advantage. He's got an initiative advantage with the base. But you are about to see why Voice of Akasha is called the GOAT. So Rip moves out. He builds up the wall as best as he can. Lots of injured properties around here, though. But here comes Voice of Akasha. He captures the Com Tower. Max Blast. 90% firepower. This was the window that I talked about. The small window where Voice of Akasha has a massive firepower advantage. In comes the battlecopter. Boom. Tank charges in, one-shots the anti-air. Tank comes in, one-shots the other tank. Yeah, at 90%, you one-shot tanks. Another tank goes down. Infantry dies. Battlecopter comes in, takes down the medium tank. Another tank charges in from Voice of Akasha. Look at the damage he's dealing right here. And now he's capping the base too. An absolutely crazy Max Blast out of Voice of Akasha right now. Killing so many of Rip's units. And look at that, ladies and gentlemen. His HQ is exposed. Lots of infantry coming in from Akasha right here. And he keeps mass-producing battlecopters like it's nobody's business. 3 more tanks coming out from Akasha right here. Crazy. But Rip now takes back the com tower, so now they're even in firepower again. And Rip counters with the max blasts. In comes the tank. Not quite a one-shot, though. Actually using the anti-air to kill the tank. That's pretty impressive. Ooh. That is a counterattack, alright. Look at that. One-shotting the tank. 4 HP anti-air. Boom. Kills it. When you got firepower that high, even injured anti-air are able to. Rip sends his battlecopter up north here. I don't really know what he thinks it's going to do with this anti-air here. I think he just wanted to stop Akasha from moving his infantry across the mountain. He really wants these 2 properties here, basically. But look at the income advantage right now. 32k for Rip. It's pretty crazy. So it's a strong counterattack. Very strong counterattack from Rip. But Voice of Akasha is far from done. Look at the captures he's going to do this turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he equalizes the income. But he actually, yeah, now he equalizes it. 28,000 to 28,000. But he's not done. He's smelling blood. And he's going for it. The anti-air are exposed. They will fall. And that means Voice of Akasha's battlecopters will have free reign to absolutely crush here. And now he's kind of starting to capture properties around Rip's HQ. Rip needs to be very careful now. If Voice of Akasha, there's a big threat from Akasha here that Rip needs to be careful about. And that is if Voice of Akasha manages to kill all the anti-air, he can put a single battlecopter on this tile to block reinforcements from Rip. Rip has to build anti-air, pretty much. I would have liked to see a bomber out of Akasha here, honestly. But I think he just wanted a sheer mass of units more than anything. Rip's turn. Rip has a much better economy than Akasha. He's capturing a lot more properties, and he still has a decent amount of vehicles in the area. He finds a way to pick off Akasha's battlecopter. And it's a good defense of his HQ. In comes the tank. Rip now moving in with a medium tank here as well. To go, like, at some point, these players are going to have to tank up the medium and neo tanks. Very important. More anti-air coming out of Rip. He has to produce those anti-air. They're so integral to this particular match. And now Rip is even moving in a little bit, being a little bit cheeky. But of course, Akasha has a bunch of units to interrupt here, so it's not like he's probably not going to get it. But what Akasha, he's been moving so many of his infantry here to attack that he doesn't really have that many infantry in this area to take. Like, there's still 2 neutral cities here and one of Rip's cities that Akasha hasn't even begun capturing yet. So moving all of these infantry in here to try and take out the HQ, I think it's actually punishing him a little bit here. But Akasha here, he's not gonna give up the attack. He's not gonna give up the attack. He realizes that he has to try and beat Rip because the economy advantage for Rip is too big. And he's just gonna give Rip this city, which I thought was a little strange. But I guess he really didn't want to. And here we see a Neo-Tank coming out of Akasha. This is what he really needs. The Neo-Tank with Max Blast is actually able to reach all the way over here. So it's very important to get a lot of Neo-Tanks out here. The player with the most Neo-Tanks is probably going to win this engagement. But Rip here, 31k to 25k. It's pretty crazy. Let's see how it goes. Rip has a very good defense of his HQ right here. Target firing that battlecopter and moving in that medium tank on the HQ and killing the battlecopter. Just max things, you know? Killing battlecopters with medium tanks. Just things you can do when you have a lot of firepower. So it's a good defense from Rip. Rip counters with a Neo-Tank of his own. Tries to be a little bit cheeky by taking this property. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't like this battlecopter right here. This battlecopter is doing nothing. I mean, he did get him this property, but he should just move it away now. I don't know if spending... I mean, getting 2 cities for a battlecopter, maybe not terrible, but I think this battlecopter would have been much better down here. But Voice of Akasha now finally starting to capture some properties, and he's not letting up on the attack. He has to keep attacking here. And he moves in his Neo-Tank. This is a strong position for that Neo-Tank. Voice of Akasha has his Max Blast. You saw how devastating the last Max Blast was. Another Neo-Tank out of Voice of Akasha right here. Has to defend his own HQ. That's important. Day 17. Rip is 10k ahead in income, and it's starting to... Now it's really starting to hurt Akasha every turn that goes by. Rip is going to just get a bigger advantage in terms of income. So Akasha has to make something happen here. He has to equalize this. He has to make a big attack. But here comes Rip's counterattack, and Rip actually pumps his max force. In comes the tank. Another tank. And Rip's defense is just really good here. And it looks very, very, like, how is Voice of Akasha going to penetrate this wall? Like, it's, Rip's defense is so solid. He's hunkering around his HQ, builds another Neo-Tank. He has such an economic advantage right now. It's hard to see how Voice of Akasha is going to be able to attack into this. But day 18 rolls in. Is he going to pop it? He is. Voice of Akasha pops his max blasts. Let's see what he's able to do. Tank comes in, takes out the anti-air. Kills the other anti-air. Tank comes in, takes out the 8 HP tank. Uses his anti-air to kill the 4 HP tank. Battlecopter comes charging in. And he's going to be able to take out Rip's anti-air. And boom! Oh, Rip's anti-air are gone. Of course, Rip still has this coveted city covered. If Voice of Akasha were to put a single battlecopter on the city, it would be GG for Rip. But the Neo-Tank comes in. And it's a really strong attack again from Voice of Akasha. And now he's threatening the HQ. Rip needs to be careful. Rip needs to be very careful here. Day 18 rolls in. And I imagine Rip must be sweating a bit right now because look at his HQ. There's so many infantry around it. But more reinforcements are coming across the mountains to help out. Neo-Tank's now reinforcing. Even taking some time to ward away Voice of Akasha's infantry over here, moving his battlecopter away. He's going to get the city sooner or later too. But I still think that the force around his HQ looks very, very, very scary. He has to be very careful here because even though Akasha just popped his super, it's a mixed base map and powers are going to come back really quickly. So day 19 rolls in. Voice of Akasha starting to climb up the income a little bit more. He got another city back from Rip. But he's still behind. This city still not captured. And he has to build it again. He has to be careful now that Rip doesn't kill this anti-air and places a battlecopter right here. But in comes the Neo-Tank. 2 Neo-Tanks from Voice of Akasha, ladies and gentlemen. He kills the second Neo-Tank and then he places other units in front of it to wall it. And boom, the HQ is under capture. 11 points left on that HQ. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Rip. Your HQ is being captured. This is not good. This is not good. Day 19 rolls in. What is Rip gonna do? Is he gonna pop his max force? Comes in with the tank. He sacks the tank to get a little bit of extra power charge. Moves in with the medium tank, brings it down to 2 HP. Powerful move from Rip there. I mean, just look at that. Look at how beautifully. Look at how beautiful that is. Uses the tank, sacks it to get a power charge, as well as bringing the Neo-Tank down to 9 HP. And with this little bit of extra damage, he's able to kill the Neo-Tank with a medium tank and a tank. I mean, this is just such good calculations out of Rip. I know a lot of players who would have just fumbled here. They wouldn't have been able to respond to this, but Rip found the perfect solution. Brings in the anti-air, but he doesn't kill the infantry, though. And Akasha has a lot of infantry that he can use to take over this HQ. And you can see the bottleneck right here. The bottleneck is real for Rip right here. Day 20 rolls in for Voice of Akasha. He continues capping the HQ, bringing it down to 5, and joins the infantry together. And now, he is just going to wall the HQ. And pops his max force mid-turn to get a little bit of extra movement, so he can move in here. The extra defense is also quite significant. But he just doesn't have the units to completely surround the HQ, which is what he would have loved to do, but still. That HQ has 5 points left. Is Rip gonna be able to find a way through here? Day 20 rolls in. Rip attacking the anti-air. Sacking his own infantry. Just barely kills the anti-air. Moves the Neo-Tank around. And pops it. Just barely gets enough for the max force. And with this power charge, he is able to once again just barely interrupt. 4 HP infantry, 5 HP HQ. Or 5 point HQ. How freaking clutch is that? Let's just look at this again, okay? Sacks a tank, sacks the infantry, brings in the tank to kill the anti-air, just barely gets max force on the... I think that was an exact... Yeah, 48,600 out of 48,600. That's absolutely crazy. Actually, no, he's 49,000, so he's like barely 1,000 ahead. And with this exact amount, he's able to get rid of the HQ cap. And Voice of Akasha's attack suddenly is not looking so good anymore. But let's see if Voice of Akasha has more left in the tank. He still has a lot of units coming at Rip, but with those 2 Neo-Tanks there, Akasha does have a bomber coming in. I kind of wish he'd built that a little bit sooner. I think the bomber would have been really nice to have. But I think Akasha, he just wants to try one more time. He wants to try and capture the HQ one more time. He has the bomber now, but it's a little bit too late. If he was here like 1 turn sooner, I think this bomber could have been crazy good. But I guess he just didn't have the economy for that. He needed the tank count to keep up with Rip. But day 21 rolls in here. And I don't think Rip's gonna have any issues. Now Rip is capturing Akasha's HQ. In comes the anti-air. In comes the tank. And yeah, Rip's vehicle count at this point is too high for Akasha to really be able to realistically do anything. And, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're seeing the end. Akasha here. He's just gonna take one final lap here. He spells G. He spells G. Good game with this infantry. That is the trademark of a proper champion, ladies and gentlemen. Is he gonna try and do it here too? GG. That's going out in style. That's going out in style. Of course, he can't resist to take one final shot with this bomber before he resigns. What a way to go out, ladies and gentlemen. What a way to go out. So, the mighty, unbeatable Voice of Akasha has at long last been slain. It was bound to happen sooner or later. No one can be the undefeated GOAT forever. It just doesn't work like that. You know, Magnus Carlsen has to be defeated at some point. Mike Tyson has to be defeated at some point. No one can remain on top forever. But Voice of Akasha's reign has been long. And he put up a damn good fight against Rip, who is, let's face it, one of the best players of all time. And what a match it was. What a pleasure it was to watch these two titans go up against each other. This was an absolute joy to spectate and to commentate. And let me just bring up let me just bring up this. No, not that one. We are going to see Voice of Akasha versus Inkugark, as well as Voice of Akasha versus Toulouse very soon. those are going to be banger matches as well. So definitely a lot to look forward to. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this match. Was there anything like crucial I missed with my commentary? Let me know. And do you think, where do you think Voice of Akasha lost? Personally, I think, if I am to, like, I think he lost when Rip found this attack right here. Let's see, where is it? This attack, yeah, it was, I think it was on, was it on day 10? I think it was on day 10. Yeah, this attack, no, not that one, it was a little bit later. Yeah, on day 11, this attack right here from Rip, on day 11, that's what won him the game. I don't think Akasha saw this. There we go. And the fact that he had an infantry there too to cap the base immediately, this gave him like 3 days of initiative over Voice of Akasha, which is just too much, you know. And Akasha fought like hell while behind. Like, he fought like hell, and he came close to HQ capping Rip. Rip just barely interrupted that first cap. So Akasha was almost still able to snatch a victory even after this. But this was, in my opinion, the game-winning move. This earned him the base. I wonder if Akasha had moved... I think maybe if Akasha had moved this tank off and built a medium tank like Rip did here, I think maybe he would have held on a few extra turns, because Rip doesn't have a single battlecopter out, by the way, so a medium tank here would have bought Akasha a lot of time. So, I'm wondering if that would have been a better move, but again, the power of hindsight, right? So, let's just... One thing I want to do before we end this, we're just going to go through the match really quickly to see how the battlefield evolved. Kind of like a bit of a... It's a bit of a summary of the match right here. So you can see a lot of fighting happening in the center. But because Rip is able to take that base, Akasha's attack is devastating, but Rip's counterattack is just a little bit too strong. Akasha spells GG, and he resigns. So, ladies and gentlemen, I took more time casting this match than I usually do. I hope you guys don't mind. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Give it a like and a comment. And I'll see you guys real soon. Take care.